Hello and welcome back to Boxing Buzz Unleashed. Today I'm having a fun video topic where I rank poor career decisions made by boxers. So how this video is going to work out is I have a criteria. These are going to be ranked starting from C tier to S tier. I'm going to be basing this on how bad the decision physically damaged the boxer. How did it affect their future career? Did it negatively impact their potential/future earnings? Did it halt or derail the fighter's career? And lastly, was the fighter able to make a successful comeback from this decision? So as I added note, this is my personal opinion. You can have your own, and also talk down in the comments below, as we'd all like to hear your own thoughts and opinions on boxers who made poor career decisions. So anyways, let's get started at C tier. C tier are decisions that had a minor to moderate impact on the fighter's career, but they can or have been able to successfully recover from this minor mishap and either recover their progress or reach better positions. So starting off at C tier is Nonito Donair's Super Bantam and Featherweight campaign. Nonito Donair, after ruling and dominating the Bantamweight division, moved up to Super Bantamweight for more of a challenge. He started out very well, defeating guys like Toshioki Nishioka, Horia Arce, and capturing a few titles here and there. But it didn't look like the same Nonito Donair that he was at bantamweight. He looked a lot slower and more plodding and had to rely on his counter left hook. And then suffered a devastating loss to the likes of Guillermo Rigondeaux, where he got scored for all 12 rounds but only luckily got a knockdown. Frampton outboxed him, Magdalena outworked him, and the devastating nail in the coffin was Walter's devastating knockout over him. His campaign at these divisions were clearly out of his depth, and he started looking old and was contemplating retirement. But he was able to successfully recover by moving down to the bantamweight division and participating in the Super 6 tournament, where he reached the finale and fought Naoya Inoue to a close and exciting matchup. He was able to secure another title in the bantamweight division, becoming a 3-time bantamweight world champion, and secured another payday against Naoya Inoue in a title unification. So Nonito Donair, even though making this minor mishap at staying at these divisions he was clearly out of his depth in for a bit too long, had still successfully recovered from it and made a good account of his career, even though he ended off with a slight loss to Alejandro Santiago. So now we move on to our next boxer, that being David Benavidez, losing his super middleweight titles twice and not unifying with any of the champions at the time. David Benavidez had won the WBC super middleweight title, which was vacated against Ronald Gabriel, where he suffered his first knockdown but was able to win a close unanimous decision. He was able to rematch Gabriel and prove that he was still the better boxer and beat him more convincingly, but he would end up losing his title in his first defense due to being caught with cocaine. Then he would fight the current WBC champion Andre Durrell, where he dominated him and finished him, and then he would lose in his next fight the title due to missing weight. The problem with this is, if he hadn't lost his titles in both situations, he would have been in line to face Canelo when he moved up to the super middleweight division. And all the problems that caused of Canelo not fighting Benavidez would have been solved if Benavidez kept his composure and kept disciplined. But he still hasn't lost hope of his career yet, as he recently beat Alexander Volsnik for the WC interim light heavyweight title. And now the choice to either wait for Dimitri Bivol and Artur Beterbiev to fight for undisputed and become an immediate challenger to those titles, or go down to fight Canelo. So his career is still in shape, but he could have had a better career if he stayed disciplined. Moving on to the last boxer on C tier, we have Teofimo Lopez making the bout between him and George Kambosos difficult. After Teofimo Lopez had an impressive win over Lomachenko, where he was able to become the WBC franchise, WBO, WBA, and IBF lightweight champion, he was starting to get on his high horse and a big head, and this ended up drastically changing his career projection, as even though he was looking to move up in weight divisions, he still had to either satisfy his mandatory in George Kambosos after he beat Lee Selby, or fight Devin Haney, who was the true WBC champion. But Teofimo started acting up and didn't take Kambosos seriously, and that was when we saw him lose to George Kambosos, a guy he had no reason to lose to. And this ended up looking very bad for Teofimo, as he didn't rematch him and he lost all his titles just like that, and couldn't even gain the WBO super status to fight the then WBO champion at 140, Josh Taylor. But this still ended up to his benefit though, as once he moved up, he defeated Pedro Camba, Sandor Martin, and beat the lineal ring and WBO champion Josh Taylor to become another two-weight world champion and two-weight lineal. He still has a good career and making defense against Domino Ortiz and Steve Claggett, so his career is not as destroyed as it would have been. But now we move on to B tier. B tier are decisions that had a moderate impact to a fighter's career that either derailed their potential earnings or made them weaker than they could have been. So starting off in B tier, we have Kell Brook fighting Gennady Golovkin in middleweight and then swiftly returning to welterweight. Kell Brook took the Golovkin fight in the middle of the negotiation with Jesse Vargas, the WBO welterweight champion. Initially, Triple J was supposed to face Chris Eubank Jr., but Chris Eubank Jr. pulled out, and they early on offered the contract to Kell Brook. And Kell Brook immediately stepped on the opportunity to face Gennady Golovkin, as this was a good money fight for him and would have good on his resume. But this was ultimately a poor career decision, as he could have just waited out the year. As we see in the bottom right corner of the PowerPoint, we see the then champions and who you could have unified titles with. We have the two WBO champions during 2016 and 2017, that being Manny Pacquiao and Jeff Horn. And you probably could have tried to secure a fight between the two PBC fighters, Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman. But he ended up going to fight Triple G, where even though he made a good of account of himself later on, he still got dominated easily and got his eye socket broken. As we see in the PowerPoint slide, when his eye socket got broken, it could have potentially blinded him after one more good hit. And initially, Kell Brook should have taken a lengthy layoff, but he needed to keep his IBF title by defending it against his mandatory Errol Spence Jr. And Kell Brook didn't want to vacate his title as he worked so hard to get it. So once he went down after a bad weight cut from moving from middleweight back down to welterweight, he still lost and got another one of his eye sockets broken by Errol Spence. This shafted his career from where he could have been. He could have been a unified champion, and this stopped him from reaching any more world title claims as he lost to WBO champion Terence Crawford. But he still ended up his career on a high note, finally securing a win over his longtime rival Amir Khan. So next we move on to the next boxer, that being Tyson Fury cherry picking Francis Ngannou instead of fighting a ranked contender or Alexander Usyk. So Tyson Fury would start for negotiations between him and Alexander Usyk for undisputed, and he would be teasing this Ngannou fight as an easy fight for him, and this was to troll Usyk and the boxing public to show them that he could do whatever he wants. But this ended up a very horrible decision for Tyson Fury, as he looked very bad there against Ngannou, got dropped, and ruined his public image and made Francis Ngannou the hero of this story. And this inevitably made him force the Usyk match next year and made him act all silly, as people now saw that he was exposed. And in our top right hand corner, we see the WC rankings during that time of 2023 when this fight was first announced. He could have fought many other people like Andy Ruiz, Jared Anderson, Frank Sanchez. All these other guys in these ranks would have made suitable opponents, but due to his greed, it resulted in him facing Francis Ngannou, and this ultimately led him to losing his WC title to Alexander Usyk in the undisputed bout. But anyways, we'll see what happens for him in the future and whether this could be an A tier mess up that he made. Moving on to our last boxer in B tier, we have Prince Nassim Ahmed taking the Marco Antonio Barrera bout lightly. As we see on the right hand corner, we see Marco Antonio Barrera at the top, training in Big Bear Gym in an uncomfortable climate, whereas Nassim Ahmed was training in his luxury villa and in a comfortable environment. In the documentary, he was clowning on Barrera, and him and his family and all the people around him were gassing him up to be better than he thought he was, and downplaying Marco Antonio Barrera's achievements. He didn't take the fight seriously, and even a story with Emmanuel Stewart sending him tapes of Marco Antonio Barrera, as Prince Nassim had not even looked at them, even though this was necessary, as the Marco Antonio Barrera they were studying using old film tapes wasn't the same Marco Antonio Barrera that Emmanuel Stewart sent tapes of, because after Marco Antonio Barrera beat Junior Jones, he was a completely different fighter. And this of course led to one of the most disastrous defeats for a boxer in history, as Marco Antonio Barrera had schooled him and outboxed Nassim Ahmed easily. Even though Nassim Ahmed took the loss well, in his return fight he looked very boring, and people started to see the cracks in his character, as once he lost, all that allure and fanfare that he had went away. He ended up retiring from boxing, even though he had more left in him and he could have moved up a weight division to secure more high level bouts, but that's for history to decide. And he missed out on many key bouts during the featherweight division that would have been so interesting to see, as we could have seen a Manny Pacquiao bout, Eric Morales bout, Juan Manuel Marquez bout, maybe even a Floyd Mayweather bout, but that's only left to history. So now we move on to A tier. A tier, a decision that had a huge impact to a fighter's career, that the fighters lost a lot of their potential earnings, ruined their prime of their careers, or made them unable to reach their full potential as a boxer. So starting out at 8 here, we have Deontay Wilder avoiding the Anthony Joshua bout. Deontay Wilder had the weakest run to as a WBC champion, even while being 33-0 with 33 knockouts and capturing the WBC title. His managers knew to keep him away from Vladimir Klitschko, as they knew even this old version of Klitschko would outbox and school Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder was also making different kinds of excuses not to face Anthony Joshua, in my opinion. And also, Deontay Wilder's limited skill set made him cherry-pick some bad opposition, like Dominic Breazeale and Luis Ortiz, who was overhyped by PBC and American media to make Anthony Joshua look bad. And due to all of this, he ended up having to cherry-pick an opponent, which was disastrous, and that opponent was an old, retired, drug-addicted Tyson Fury who had been gone from boxing for many years at that point. This would end up disastrous for Deontay Wilder, as he would end up having a close draw with him, then losing back-to-back fights with Tyson Fury. This would inevitably result in him losing interest in the public eye, as people had seen that he is not unstoppable and could be beat. And Tyson Fury, Zhile Zhang, and Joseph Parker had exposed him as the one-dimensional boxer he was. This is all could have been prevented if he just chose to accept that he was a B-side against Anthony Joshua and fight him. Because if he fought him in England, he was still secured to have a rematch in the US. But due to his inability to think long term and his inability to realize his skill level, he knew that this bout wasn't really worth him taking, so it ended up resulting in devastating consequences for his future. Moving on, we have Adrian Broner's imitation of Floyd Mayweather and rejecting the $40 million Rock Nation contract. Adrian Broner tried to copy Floyd Mayweather's entire style and business approach to boxing, but he clearly lacked the desire, discipline, reflexes, work ethic, and IQ of Floyd Mayweather to even become him. He was a decent lightweight and possibly a good super lightweight, but his obsession with money and trying to be like Floyd Mayweather resulted in him moving to the money division, which was welterweight at the time. And this resulted in him having a very close fight with Paulie Malignaggi, to then losing the most iconic bout in boxing against Marcos Maidana, where he left the arena looking stupid. And this was when people started to realize Adrian Broner was not as good as he claimed to be. And then after having some close bouts in the welterweight division, and it was clearly proven that he couldn't stand up with the rest of the competition. So even though he was proven to not be as good as he was said he was, Rock Nation still offered him a 5-year contract of $40 million to fight. But Adrian Broner didn't feel it and insulted Jay-Z, who was the owner of Rock Nation. But he ended up turning this back a couple of years later and trying to apologize, as he knew that this contract was the only thing that was going to save his dying career. And now that we see him now, he's irrelevant. His loss to Blair House proves how far he has fallen, and he should have really stayed at the super lightweight division instead of trying to chase the welterweight division for money. Because if he stayed at the super lightweight division, he would have taken a lot longer to be exposed as the boxer he was. Now lastly, in the 8 tier, we have Meldrick Taylor playing into Julio Cesar Chavez's game. Meldrick Taylor was an Olympic gold medalist and had very good hand speed, but the problem that would have led him to this bout with Julio Cesar Chavez was fighting in the inside, as Meldrick Taylor loved to slug it out with his opponents even when he had the clear speed advantage. And even though he was blitzing Julio Cesar Chavez with blinding combinations, landing 6 to 7 punch combinations, it was on closer inspection, it was shown that Chavez was actually slipping and rolling these punches, slightly moving back and countering Meldrick Taylor with powerful left hooks, right straights, and other body assault combinations. All this damage accumulated by Meldrick Taylor made his eyes shut in the later rounds, and was shown, and in the end of the fight we saw how brutally beaten it was, as his blood covered his trunks. And in the 12th round we see him get knocked down in the final 12 seconds of the bout, and as he tries to get up we see the look in his face. He clearly wasn't there in the moment and ended up getting stopped. Even if he were to win that fight and the ref were allowed to continue, it was clear as day that Meldrick Taylor lost all of his prime in that one night. Meldrick Taylor would not look the same after the bout, and even though he would win a title again, he still didn't look like the same Meldrick Taylor of old, who was super fast, who looked energetic, and somebody who even reached more greatness than he already did. And this ended up resulting in him looking old, while Chavez still continued to have a lengthy career with little less downs than Meldrick Taylor did. So now we move on to the S tier. S tier are decisions that made such a devastating impact on the fighter's career that it was unrecoverable, and there was no way for the fighter to fix domestic as it will haunt them for the rest of their career. Starting off in S tier, the 12 as old as time, it's Roy Jones Jr. not retiring after his fight against Antonio Tarver. Roy Jones Jr. is coming off a historic win over John Ruiz, becoming a heavyweight champion even though he started at middleweight. He cut back down to light heavyweight 8 months after his fight to face Antonio Tarver, where he was in a close match and he didn't even look like the same Roy Jones Jr. of old. But he was able to scrape a majority decision win. But he could have retired then and there and no one would have questioned that bout in the future, and many would just say that Roy Jones Jr. suffered a bad weight cut trying to get down back to light heavyweight. But he was probably too brave for himself and wanted to not leave his career on a blemished record. Went back to rematch Tarver, where he would end up being knocked out in the second round and whose career would forever be stopped and damaged from there on out, as we would lose to guys that he usually would beat it with ease, losing to guys that don't even stand a chance against these modern day fighters and the Roy Jones Jr. of old. So if Roy Jones Jr. had just decided to retire after his fight with Antonio Tarver, he would have been recognized as one of the greatest fighters of all times with a basically unblemished record on his resume. Next, we have John Real Casimiro getting stripped of his WBO Super Bantamweight title. John Real Casimiro was just looking for his chance to face Naoya Inoue to unify the titles and become undisputed in the Bantamweight division. This bout was highly anticipated between both fighters and both fan bases, as the fight was supposed to happen in 2020 but got stopped and delayed due to COVID-19. All John Real Casimiro had to do was face his mandatory challenger Paul Butler. When he was recording a video for his YouTube channel talking about his pre-fight camp, it was shown that he used a sauna to cut weight, which was against the Triple BOC's laws, resulting in him getting stripped of his title. In the end, this title will go to Paul Butler, who received the fight against Naoya Inoue and losing a single-handedly 11th round knockout loss. While on the other end, Casimiro would never reach the same acclaim that he used to have, as he would have two unknown fights and have in his recent fight against former IBF Super Bantamweight champion Yukinori Oguni, who looked so sluggish and even past his prime, as we would see that this old John Real Casimiro wouldn't have standed a chance against this bantamweight version of Naoya Inoue. And now, lastly, we have Andy Ruiz now maintaining the momentum in the Anthony Joshua rematch. Andy Ruiz was coming off the biggest win of his entire career, a career-defining win over Anthony Joshua, becoming the unified heavyweight champion. And if he really started to dedicate himself to training and took boxing even half as seriously as he did that night, he would have probably maintained his titles in the Anthony Joshua rematch. As although Joshua was more clinical in the second fight, if Andy Ruiz just came in there with actual motivation to win, he could have probably blessed Anthony Joshua and probably won a close decision. But now he doesn't even have any hopes of winning another world title. And at that point, if he was even as half as motivated as he was on that night, he probably could have beaten AJ and Wilder. As we see with Wilder, he wouldn't have been able to withstand Andy Ruiz's blitzing attacks. And now he missed out on so much history and so much potential earnings he could have made. And this is a result of the biggest fumble in his entire career.